Welcome and welcome back. This is Sophia, and today's topic is very interesting. Today, we are connecting the dots between the Maraka houses, which is the 2nd and the 7th, which is Venus ruled, and how afflicted Venus types can be born and attract difficult family dynamics within their lives. We'll connect the dots between both and to give you solutions as well. So stick around because I've got a masterclass ready for you. Let's get started. Today's topic is something that even very experienced astrologers tend to move past because it's generally quite uncomfortable to talk about. Because it asks you to look at the most beautiful planet in the sky, which is Venus, and understand her beauty as a shadow sometimes. Because not all of us are born with a perfect Venus placement, and sometimes that translates as very difficult experiences because Venus is the planet of relationships, not just romantic relationships and long-term partnerships, but also our own families. So how they inform each other is something that is very important to understand. Venus is Shukra. Venus is also Shukracharya. So in mythology, Shukracharya was a sage who didn't need anyone. Fiercely independent, Shukracharya meditated for 5,000 years independently, alone on his own with very little resources. And because of his dedication, he was awarded the Mrit Sanjeevani Vidya by Lord Shiva himself, because I think all of the other gods around Shukracharya started to fear his powers, his dedication, really, his devotion. So they went to Shiva and complained and said, please make this person stop and give him something to pacify his dedication so he doesn't become so powerful that we come under siege or under his rule. Literally translates to the power to resurrect the dead. There's a lot of death, isolation, and betrayal associated with the planet Venus. It's not only the planet of beauty and materialistic benefits, it really has a deeper spiritual meaning, and today we'll understand exactly what that is, because living on planet Earth with difficult relationships is never easy. Today we want to understand how these personalities can become really successful in the end and what sabotages that as well. We'll cover a lot of concepts today. Once you understand why Venus is the Marrakesh, once you understand that what Venus' 2nd house truly holds, what the 7th house truly holds, and the 12th house, because 12th house is the natural house of Pisces, and Venus exalts in Pisces. So that placement, the Pisces placement, will actually close the loop of exactly why Venus is such a challenging planet sometimes, and you will never look at your Venus placement again in the same way. We'll also explain dynamics with your family about why you attract certain kind of relationships and the love that you were given and withheld and what that really means to you. What I want you to do is get your pen and paper out along with your Vedic birth chart. And if you don't know how to get your birth chart, check the description box below. The website is deva.guru. Put your details in there and it'll generate a pre-birth chart for you. Now, I want you to look at both D1 chart and D9 chart, because all of these placements apply to both charts. So make sure to look at both. I want to repeat both the D1 chart and D9 chart before we begin. Perfect. So what is a Maraka? This is the science of sacred endings. So let us begin first at the foundation, because if you do not understand what a Maraka is, then everything else I see today is just word salad. From the Sanskrit root, mar means to die, to dissolve, to cease. A Maraka in classical Vedic astrology is literally that which causes death. or more precisely, that which causes the ending of a particular format. Doesn't have to be as dramatic as death, just one thing ending naturally, another thing beginning. Cycle of birth and rebirth. And in this particular life to be experienced, and in this particular cycle of your existence. Because in modern practice of Vedic astrology, with the advances of medicine, surgery, treatment, Maraka planets do not necessarily cause physical death. Like I said, it's not meant to be that dramatic, because they may cause health events or major life transitions. They may cause endings of chapters that feel like small deaths to the soul. The loss of a relationship, the collapse of an identity, or severing of family dynamics that are slowly killing you from the inside. These are Maraka events. But historically, in the classical texts, the Maraka houses were precise indicators of when the soul chose to leave either planet Earth or a certain event or thing or place. So I want you to understand the logic of why the 2nd and 7th houses became the Maraka houses, because the logic here is important. This is very specific design. Jyotish is a science. It's not woo-woo. If this is a simulation and you are the avatar, you're in the center of your chart, and everything around you, literally everything that populates your world. If you enter a virtual reality headset, you are the eyes, the character that's looking at everything around you. That is what your birth chart is. So every chart also has a longevity bank, and in Vedic astrology, it is known as the Ayush Bhava, the house of life and the house of lifespan. So this is generally the 8th house. Think of your 8th house as a reservoir. So it's a reservoir of prana, pranic energy, life force energy that was poured to you at the moment of birth, and you have a limited amount of it. Now there's also a second longevity indicator, and that is the 3rd house. Why 3rd house seems random? It's not random. It's actually 8 places away from the 8th house. This concept in Vedic astrology is known as Bhavad Bhava, which means house-to-house connectivity. So you place your finger on the 8th house. That is going to be the house you start counting from. So 8 places away, you will land in your 3rd house. Okay? So we have 2 longevity houses, 8 from 8, and 8, of course, is the origin. Now, the 12th house in Jyotish represents losses, expenditure, dissolution, and things that leave us. And here is also the mathematics of Maraka. 12th from the 8th house is the 7th house. So 7th house represents the loss of your primary longevity bank, loss of energy. And 12th from the 3rd house is your 2nd house. The 2nd house represents loss of your secondary longevity, the subtext beneath the subtext, the layer beneath the layer. Your prana, your vitality, and your life force dissipates in the 2nd house, which is why if you use a lot of your energy maintaining family dynamics, maintaining relationships and businesses, these are the also 2nd house is the house of food. You have to consume a lot to stay alive. And the 7th house belongs to sexual activities as well, which means you need to lose a lot of that life force energy and drive it outwards so that you can produce new life. So these houses are obviously not meant to be evil at all. They're not cursed or anything, but mathematically precisely and geometrically, they represent the drainage of life forces, and they are the holes in your reservoir. So a Maraka house is not the house of death or death in isolation, no. So it is a house that activates when the karma of a lifetime is approaching its completion point. So normally it's the best not to have a lot of planets in the 2nd or the 7th houses, because it means that you are going to be draining like 5-year-old battery. But if that is your karma here, then this video becomes even more important for you. So let's take a quick, brief moment to understand what Venus affliction is. Okay, so Venus in its own signs, great. But if Venus is in debilitation, which means Virgo, or in the 6th house, or it is in an enemy sign like Leo, or it is combust by the sun, or it is retrograde, and it is falling in one of its own houses, which means the 2nd or the 7th. This in Vedic astrology is known as Karaka Bhavanash, which means it's destroying the significations of its own house. And this one's going to be a hard one. If Venus is in Pisces, is also considered an affliction to Venus, especially in Kali Yuga, because Venus in Pisces is overly spiritual placements for marriage. So again, nothing to fear. We are here for solutions today, and I'll tell you what we can do about solving these issues. So these are some of the complicated Venus placements. There are other complications that come with Venus as well. Venus can be conjunct Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, and Mars. Venus is a very soft planet, very gentle planet. It doesn't like the harshness that comes with these malefics. So that is also considered an affliction to Venus. And when I say conjunction, I also mean anything that forms a yoga, which means even aspected aspects. So Venus is in a very healthy place, but also aspected by these malefics. There can be an affliction to Venus. So now that we know all the afflictions to Venus, let's move on with this part. Venus rules Taurus, and it rules Libra, and it exalts in Pisces, which is the 12th. So this is a primary force of creating drainage within Vedic astrology's design. So let me show you how. So the second part of this topic, we will be talking about just the 2nd house, which is about family, stability, nourishment, gathering resources, and your voice, even your face. So the 2nd house in Sanskrit is known as Dhanabhava, which is the house of wealth. Yes, wealth is money, but the 2nd house absolutely governs your finances, material resources, what you've accumulated. But today we are going deeper into classical texts. You will find that the 2nd house governs 6 dimensions of the human experience that are all woven together. And every single one of them is critical to understanding what happens when Venus, the natural lord of this house, is afflicted. The 2nd house is the house of your original tribe, so people you were born into, first humans you soul encountered in this lifetime, something you didn't have a choice with. This came from past life karmas, and we won't go into too much detail with that particular aspect of past life history. We'll talk about this life context. Then we spoke about Dhanabhav, which means wealth and resources, not just money, everything that was stored for you, everything you were given as a foundation, material, emotional, spiritual. And what did your family pour into you, the values? What was in the treasury? Number 3 is Vak, which means your voice, your speech. So the 2nd house governs how you learn to communicate, the words that you were taught, even your accent really, the tone you were shown, what you were allowed to say when you were punished for saying something that was not suitable to other ears. And this is important because your voice is your throat chakra. Your authentic expression lives in the 2nd house. Number 4 will be nourishment. So literally what you were fed. But again, let's go deeper. So were you emotionally nourished as well? Were you spiritually nourished? Was there food on the table and love in the room? Venus is a water element. Okay, so with any water element in Vedic astrology, a nourishing aspect does come to it. Spiritual aspect does come into it as well. So if there was food on the table but not love, that means there was material security but not emotional security. Or maybe there was neither. Maybe there was a lot of poverty and there was no love either. That can make things extremely uncomfortable because it starts impacting, it starts showing on your face. And this is what we learn through face reading as well, is how to detect what a person's past might have been like. All of these impressions start to get registered as creases within the face. Your right eye gets impacted as well. Your social presentation is impacted as well because Venus is aesthetic. So how you learn to show up in the world matters hugely. Persona that you were taught to wear, right? The smile you were expected to perform. And finally, the secondary indicator would be of physical death. This is a secondary indicator of death, not the primary. So second house is also the house of Mrityu, because it is 12th from the 3rd, loss of your second longevity through loss of vitality. Now, when I look at all of these 6 put together, your kutumba, your dhana, your vak, your nourishment, your faith, impressions, and your mrityu, do you see what I see? Meaning, do you see what the second house truly is? The second house is actually your original programming. It comes from family, which means if you have an afflicted second house, it gives an astrologer a lot of information about what your future relationships are going to be like, because your foundation, if it's shaky, then it creates a shaky 7th house, which is 6 places away. And 6 places away from anything is the service to that house. So again, this is a concept of Bhadbhavam. Put your finger on the 2nd house and count 6 places away, you will reach the 7th house. And in the 7th house, you can either be of service to your partner, or you can be in direct conflict, because 6th house also creates conflict, debt, and enemies and disease. So your programming in the 2nd informs how you will treat your 7th house. And guess what? We will come to this a little bit later, but since we're talking about Bhavan, put your finger again on the 7th house and count 6 places to the 12th. To the sign of Pisces. 6 places away. So these houses, all of them, create a natural tension between each other. Venus dominated houses have natural tension. So let's understand how. Okay. So this is the operating system that your family installed in you before you were old enough to choose the programming, before you had discernment, or before you had any sort of agency. Your family wrote the code of the 2nd house, and it governs your self-worth as well. How you use your voice, how you nourish yourself, whether you give yourself self-care or self-love, how you show up in the world. So here's the most important teaching of this entire chapter, this particular segment, is that the 2nd house lord, when Venus is afflicted, the family becomes a Maraka. This is not meant to be malicious. This is not always conscious. Okay, but the family, the kutumba, becomes the force that drains your life force energy. And instead of them being your safe space, the treasury, the dhana that you can access in terms of resources, not just material, but also love, they become the debt. So instead of nourishment, you feel starved. Instead of them giving you a voice, you feel silenced. And this is precisely what researchers and psychologists who study narcissistic family dynamics have documented in detail over the decades. So think about what characterizes a narcissistic family system. And this is going to get deep. So first, love that is conditional. In the 2nd house, wealth, the family controls what you receive. In a healthy 2nd house family dynamic, love flows freely. So it is unconditional receptivity and giving. But in a narcissistic household, love is currency, which means it is given when you perform for the family. And it is withdrawn when you don't perform for them. So you are not a child, you are their investment. And there is a massive difference. Then second, speech used as a weapon. house rules your voice and the voices of those around you. In narcissistic family dynamics, words are weapons. The insults that were spoken to you in childhood did not just hurt in that moment, it lodged in your second house like thorns. So you start to think in your own mind that you'll never be good enough. Who do you think you are? You're too sensitive, you're the problem. And these are not just clever insults in Vedic astrology. This is Maraka, speech that drains the life force. Because the second house governs both who speaks to you and how you come to speak to yourself. Third is emotional starvation. Second house is nourishment. But in a narcissistic home, the parent needs or takes all the oxygen. They're the center of attention. There's nothing left for the child. And you might have, if you have an afflicted Venus and grew up in a family like this, you learn to shrink your hunger. You learn to need nothing. You learn that asking for emotional sustenance was dangerous. And over time, over the years, that starvation becomes your baseline. So you normalize the emptiness, which is quite sad. And fourth, emotional, financial control as leverage. So this is a Dhanabhav, means wealth becomes a tool for entrapment. They will give you things only so then you can extract attention out of you through guilt and leverage and things like that. Which is one of the toxic, because money, it's not a gift anymore. It's not given unconditionally. It becomes a chain that then binds you and you're forever guilty and forever in debt. Then we have fifth, perhaps the most devastating of all, is theft of identity. This one is hard because the second house governs your faiths, your presentation, your social identity. The family decides who you are. They assign you a role. You either become a golden child or you become a scapegoat, the lost child or the mascot. So you play that role for years, sometimes decades actually, because it was the only way to stay safe within that family system. But this is why we're doing this video, so it's meant to teach you, because the Vedic tradition is showing us that the role they gave you is not actually your soul, the Atman. Okay, it's not. This is a 3D reality role, only specific to Earth, and you're not meant to attach too much significance to it. And Venus, as a natural lord of the second, when afflicted, is showing you that the costume was provided temporarily. This is not you, and you are here to take it off. It's not your fault. And yet, very solvable, very solvable. So we'll understand how. Next, I want to go into chapter number 3, which is the 7th house. The mirror relationships and the partnerships that keep following. So this is the 7th house, is known as the another Maraka Bhava, the house of the other. It is 7 places away from your first house, which means it is in direct opposition to you, open competition, open enemies, but also your long-term partnerships that are meant to mirror you so you can learn from them. Because you know least about this house, and this house is not you, right? So, this is also a house where you are in service to the other person, whether it's a little bit through conflict or daily routine or through debt that is naturally created between energy exchange or even sometimes enmity. As hard it is that to hear, but sometimes most difficult relationships keep us bounded. They're known as trauma bonds. So in this house of our primary partnerships, our marriages, our most intimate bonds as well. This is the 2nd Maraka, okay? 12th from the 8th, loss of primary longevity. This house takes most of our energy. It's also loss of semen. And it is also a lot of energy goes into creating and cultivating that child. So this house initiates that. And then you gain a child 11 houses later in the 5th. So that is the design of Vedic astrology. Phenomenal technology. So Now, why would a house of marriage partnerships be the primary indicator of life force and drainage? Because the people we are most intimately bonded with have the greatest access to our pranic force. It is not metaphorical, it is actually quite literal, practical, anatomical, lived in the body. And what does the 7th house truly govern? Vivah, which is marriage. Okay? It's a primary partnership, the one you choose to build a life with. Not just a spouse, the person who stands across from you, who mirrors you back to yourself, and not just who they are. The 7th house shows the energetic signature that you are broadcasting and what answers it. So how you share, collaborate, make agreements, and compromise is also seen from this house. And again, this is a house of Mrityu, which means death. Not literal death, okay? Although it can be, but not always. That is a very once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon, so let's just stick to metaphorical death here. This can also be a house of whatever you did not resolve in your 2nd house, whatever wounded your family dynamics that followed you to this one. So again, not as a punishment. The cosmic design here is saying you could not see the wound clearly when it was given to you as a child. You were too young. Your brain was cognitively underdeveloped, too dependent or too enmeshed. So what I'm going to do is as you grow up and form partnerships with other people, I'm going to show this to you again as a mirror so that this time when it is someone you choose, this time you have eyes and the cognitive ability to see it and recognize it for what it is and resolve it. The resolution doesn't come in the 7th house, actually, it comes in the 12th. We'll talk about that. So this is exactly what happens within narcissistic relationship dynamics that's been documented and studied by modern psychology. So there's a distorted understanding of love, there's a conditional approval, like not being enough. And then they enter the adult world and they meet someone who feels familiar. And familiar is the operative word because it can be dangerous. Do you actually love them? Or are you following a pattern that feels familiar? Two things are very different things. Then none of them are comfortable and none of them are safe. They're just familiar because you've experienced it, you know the blueprint, and so you gravitate towards it. So I always say be careful of your desires, especially if you've had a rough start, because what you might attract is generally a mirror to that start to be resolved. So here, the nervous system, the deepest part of the human organism, does not distinguish between familiar and right. It only recognizes what it already knows. So the person who is emotionally starved in the 2nd house will often unconsciously seek a 7th house partner who also withholds it. Because withholding feels like love to a nervous system trained on scarcity. And the person whose 2nd house vak, which is the voice, was silenced in childhood will often unconsciously seek a partner whose voice tends to dominate, because being silenced feels like love to a system trained on powerlessness. And the person who was given conditional love that had to be earned, performed, and documented, will seek a partner who also makes them work for love, because earned love feels like living on conditions. None of this is weakness, none of this is stupidity. This is actually human biology and the cosmic design, really. So, let me give you the 5 signatures that I see most commonly in charts when there is a double Maraka dynamic that is playing out. Doesn't always have to play out. Sometimes a Venus in a very good position saves you from all of this drama. But if this is playing out, there are some very specific signatures that indicate that. Signature number 1, you attract partners who begin with extraordinary love, meaning adoration, attention, devotion, then slowly, systematically withdraw it from you. What the psychological community calls this is love bombing, followed by de-evaluation. So in your chart, this often shows as Rahu influencing Venus or the 7th house. Illusion of abundance, then the revelation of the void. Then signature number 2, you attract emotionally unavailable partners. This is especially true for Venus combust and Venus in retrograde. So you might be present in the body, present in the soul. You can see them, touch them, but you cannot reach them emotionally. This often shows Saturn also influencing Venus, either in the 7th house or the 7th lord, one of the other combinations. Love that is very cold in nature, structured, very rational, like a resource, like a resource that is in scarcity. So people tend to withhold that sort of love, which is quite damaging. Then signature number 3. Every relationship starts feeling karmic, fated, unresolvable, and there is a sense that you have to be there even when everything inside you says leave. This is often Ketu, that is conjunct Venus or aspecting Venus even, or in any way connected to the 7th house. Ketu in the 7th also does this. So it's like a past life debt playing out in this one quite repeatedly, because Ketu is always in retrograde, so there are repeating themes within relationships over and over. Then, signature number 4. After enough heartbreak, you tend to choose isolation. You close the door on partnership entirely, and something in you feels relief, not because you do not want love, but because the 7th house wound became so painful that the 12th house began to call you. And this is where Venus exalts, right? And 12th house belongs to isolation. And this is where the story shifts. For a person who suffered through dynamics, it's because the 12th house calling you toward isolation is not the end of your love story. It is the beginning of the greatest one we have seen yet. Stick around, I'll tell you how. Now, in chapter 4, what I'm going to do is talk about afflicted Venus, the 5 main configurations that show up within family karma, and how we can resolve it. So, look at your own chart as I walk you through each one, and look at both D1 and D9 chart. I want to repeat, look at both D1 and D9 chart, because the D1 chart is your physical reality, everything that's actually happening to you in terms of events. But your D9 chart is your internal experience as well, and what actually happens within partnerships. And also businesses. So it's important you look at both because they inform each other. So, configuration 1 is Venus conjunct or aspected by Rahu. Do you know who has this placement? Taylor Swift has this placement. Rahu is the north node, a shadow planet of obsession, illusion, insatiable desire. So when Rahu touches Venus, it amplifies her. Rahu is like a bomb blast of energy. It's explosive, uncontrolled energy. And when it touches another planet, what it does, it takes on the significations of that planet and becomes them. It's a trickster. It mimics as well. So it magnetizes this Venus. It makes everything Venusian feeling urgent, like addictive, overwhelming. So in relationship, this person loves intensely. They can feel like a soulmate from the very start, from the very meeting. The connection feels electric, fated, even cosmically designed somehow. But Rahu, the north node, is a creator of illusions. Okay, it's one of the nodes of the moon. So when the orbit of the moon and the sun collides in space, it creates eclipses, and there are 2 nodes that do that. One is Rahu, the other one is Ketu. We're talking about Rahu at the moment. So creating of illusions. It doesn't give you the best picture. I know in Western astrology, everyone chases the north node and wants to fulfill their life mission. And yes, you are meant to do that in this lifetime. But understand its design and then do it, because what Rahu is trying to do is put you into more karma, try to bind you to this plane. So the more you feed that illusion, go into an extreme state of things, that is when Rahu flips a switch and starts creating problems for you. It's no longer wish fulfillment, it becomes a curse. Because then you're bound to this plane, you have to keep coming back and resolving that karma over and over until it's done. The simulation has to go on, right? And Rahu is the architect of that. Which means that when he touches Venus, the love contains a mirage, an illusion. The family wound with a Venus-Rahu person was often raised in an environment where love was spectacular when it was present, and the parent could be extraordinarily warm or charming or loving. And then without warning, they go cold and absent and become critical, punishing even. This is known as love bombing, and then withdraw. So love automatically feels unsafe to the system. So when you go looking for that pattern in adult relationships, not consciously, but in the body and in the nervous system, what exactly will happen? You see clearly, because Rahu rules non-clarity. Okay, the unseen, the shudder, the illusion. The work is to develop the capacity to see love clearly, not just to feel it. To distinguish between the high of being love-bombed and the steadiness of being genuinely loved. This is Venus, Rahu, moksha, discernment in the domain of desire. If not careful, what happens with this placement is, initially, a love will come into your life that is so grand, you can't even comprehend how good it is. So you fall for the illusion, you go further into it, and there is almost always one betrayal that follows. And when that happens, it flips the switch with Rahu Venus. This Rahu Venus goes mad. And then follows a repeated cycle of love, betrayal, love, betrayal, love, and betrayal. Sometimes, most of the time, it's the other person betraying, but sometimes you become the betrayer. Because you're learning it constantly, your nervous system thinks this is normal. So it adopts it without even realizing it. What is the remedy here? The remedy here is strengthen the moon. Not even Venus, strengthen the moon. The antidote to Rahu's shadow is moonlight. Moonlight practices on Mondays. Cooling foods, stillness, white flowers for Venus, and most critically, pause before you commit within relationships. Time is your greatest ally. With the Venus-Rahu conjunction, give enough time to show you what the person really is, because Rahu acts on speed. It wants quick. Its antidote is not just the moon, it is also Saturn. Saturn rules time. If you give enough time, you can see through the mask of the other person, of the betrayal that's going to come. Wait. Train your nervous system to learn a different paradigm. And when you train your nervous system to learn a different paradigm, slowly this effect of Venus and Rahu will dissipate, and you will start to attract healthier partnerships. Then, configuration number 2. This is Venus conjunct or aspected by Saturn. Saturn is a planet of structure, discipline, restriction, karma, and time. So when Saturn touches Venus, love becomes serious. It becomes dutiful. It becomes very slow. And sometimes painful. Because the Venus-Saturn person is the one who gives everything in a relationship and feels they receive very little in return. They love deeply but carry a persistent sense of not being lovable, of not deserving pleasure. There is often shame around the body, around desire, around simply wanting anything, or even voicing their wants, because Venus is also ruling the second house of voice. The family wound here is Saturn on Venus almost always indicates family environment where love was rationed, right? Where affection was tied to productivity, to perfect behavior, to perfectionism in general. Perhaps the parent was very cold by nature, or absent even. Perhaps they were very depressed even. Maybe they themselves, as parents, never knew warmth. So they transferred that sort of behavior onto their child. But the child with Venus Saturn learned that I must have to earn love. I must have to deserve love. Love does not come freely. It must be worked for. So in their adult 7th house, they attract cold partners. Or they might attract critical partners who make them feel that love is always out of reach. Or they become, because they don't receive love so easily, they become chronically self-sufficient, very avoidant in nature. They don't ask for love, and because the wound said, don't talk about your needs, they will never be met, so don't ask for it. They become very avoidant in nature, especially dismissive, avoidant personality types have this particular placement in common in their charts, very common. What is Venus and Saturn conjunction really asking of you? So Saturn slows Venus for a reason. He's saying build something real within first, not fast love, but real love. Your work is to stop performing for love, stop earning it, and begin slowly, brick by brick, to believe that you are worthy of love. That's asking nothing in return. It's just enough. And this is the Venus-Saturn moksha, self-love that does not require justification. So the remedy here is service on Fridays, giving to those in material need. Saturn loves material dignity. And Saturn also belongs to the needy, people who don't have enough. So chanting the Shukra mantra alongside the Saturn mantra teaches these two planets to cooperate rather than be in conflict. Now, they are natural friends and natural allies within the Vedic system. But in terms of love, they create a lot of friction. Materially, this is a very good placement. You build slow and steady wealth as you move forward. But in terms of love, this can be a curse. So learn to train your nervous system to receive. That is one of the biggest practices of remedy that you can do with this placement in love specifically. Then, configuration number 3, we've got Venus conjunct or aspected by Ketu. So Ketu is the south node, the planet of past lives, of release, of dissolution, what has already been mastered and must now be released. Okay, so when Ketu touches Venus, relationships feel meaningless. Not because this person is incapable of love, but because the soul has already done so much of loving in past lives and previous incarnations that this Venus has grown weary. It wants to experience something else other than this expression. So this person often chooses aloneness, and it's not meant to be bitter. They choose it from a deep, quiet knowing that they came from something beyond partnerships. That is not the only thing here on Earth. We can move towards other experiences here on 3D reality. The family wound associated with this one is that the Venus Ketu person has been the invisible child, the one who was not actively abused necessarily, but who was truly not seen. Okay, maybe even abandoned. Possible. Maybe they were not celebrated. They were not even mirrored in their expression. So they learned to need nothing and take up no space and become absolutely invisible. Their existence doesn't really matter. They have no worth. That's how they might feel on the inside. And the greatest danger in adulthood is not that they attract a narcissist, because that can happen, but the greatest danger is spiritual bypass. This is an important concept because they might use spirituality to justify not being visible, not being actively doing anything on planet Earth, and that is not what you're meant to do here. Unless you have yogas that confirm that you're meant to take up sannyas and go into enlightenment and things like that. You came to Earth to do karmas. Even the Bhagavad Gita talks about that repeatedly. There is no dignity in spiritual bypassing. You came here to perform certain activities, and through that you can also receive enlightenment. It doesn't have to just be meditating in a cave forever. So, using their spiritual gifts that they do have, and it will have profound spiritual gifts. Let me just tell you that straight away, without any doubt, because Venus in this sort of a position, Venus creates a tapasya yoga. Maybe some involvement of Saturn in this one is also needed, but it creates a tapasya yoga. What does that mean? Venus Shukracharya did tapasya for 5,000 years without needing anyone or anything. So these people are very capable of being on their own without actually speaking to people for months. So COVID isolation may have been their own personal zombie land. I'm referencing the movie here. Literally a lot of fun stuff with no one there. So what is Venus and Ketu asking of you? It's asking that you have to still live in the world. So you might as well go ahead and feel the grief rather than escaping it and spiritual bypassing it. This is critical because this is also your medicine. Ketu Venus does not want more transcendence, it needs grounding. Your work is to be in the body, in the feeling, within the relationship, even if they're imperfect, long enough so that your nervous system can learn what it means to be seen. If you felt invisible your whole life, being seen becomes the most valuable asset for you. You need to be held in this body, in this lifetime. And this is the Venus Ketu moksha, presence over transcendence. So the remedy here is embodied practices, whether it is dance or walking barefoot on it, cooking, anything, any practice that brings you into the physical reality. And let me just say, Ketu absolutely loves dance. Nritya, which is what Shiva loves to do, and Ketu is a very high energy of Shiva. So if you bring some of the Shiva energy into this one, you will not only attract, and it may take time, don't get me wrong, Ketu does mature after 48, so it may take time, but you will end up attracting a Sati, Shiva-Sati combination. So allow yourself to feel the grief, and if you have to wait, that's fine. But you will absolutely attract a very aligned partner, provided you give back that self-love and teach your nervous system that it's okay to be in this world. Amazing. Now, configuration number 4, right? Venus conjunct or in conflict with Mars. Either it's being aspected by Mars, conjunct Mars, or in a Martian sign like Aries or Scorpio. So Mars is a planet of action, aggression, desire, will, and even fire. What business does it have conjuncting with Venus, which is a very soft water element planet? Right? When Venus and Mars are in tension, love becomes a battlefield. Passion is followed by immediate conflict, and tenderness is followed by explosion. So this person experiences love as intensity, and intensity as love. The fight and make up cycle feels alive, electric, proof that there is feeling and passion. Calm love or steady love can feel really boring to this sort of person because calm was never modeled as love in their upbringing. The family wound here is that this person was raised in an environment where love and conflict were inseparable. Maybe they had parents that fought fiercely and made up fiercely, followed by some amount of distance and then coming back together. So where love was experienced through volatility. So where one parent was passive, the other parent was explosive, and love always lived at the edge of danger. This can even give, I don't want to encourage anything, but this can even give way to very violent relationships. If not careful, verbal violence can easily turn into physical violence, and that is not encouraged, especially not on this channel. So, Mars is creative energy, Venus is creative expression. Together, when they cooperate, they produce extraordinary artwork. So if there are two lovers who are artists, this is fantastic placement for that. So extraordinary passion and service of something beautiful. Okay, so your work is to redirect that violent energy from the war of the relationship into something that is lastingly beautiful. It can even be a very spiritual placement, provided both partners are spiritual in nature. Why spiritual? Because at the later stages, Mars and Venus, when they calm their passion, it transcends into spirituality, come together, because again, Venus is Shukracharya and Mars is a devotee of Lord Ram. There is a lot of devotion combined together in this particular conjunction. It's not just meant to be violence, it's actually devotion. So if it is in a good sign, this conjunction can actually create very devoted partners. For example, in Pisces, it would create very devoted partners, provided you choose the right partner. Initially, choice of partner matters a lot. So again, don't let the passion take over. Give it time so that you can see how this relationship is forming and then make your decisions. So the remedy with this one is physical movement for Mars, art, music, beauty practices of Mars, working out together as a couple. That also works very well with this dynamic. Sometimes the conflict is the teacher, and the question is, are you learning from it or just repeating it? Right? Now, configuration number 5. Venus debilitated in Virgo. Now, we are going to talk about this exclusively, but you may also want to include a bit of retrograde and combustion with this, because some of the explanation for this will also apply to those. Vedic astrology is a very interconnected subject, and try to see it from a broader perspective of all of its misplaced positions so that you get a holistic picture. Now, Venus debilitated in Virgo, this is known as Nietzsche position, the fall of Venus. I want you to be careful here. Why does it do that? First of all, Venus is a planet of sexuality, and Virgo is a sign of virgins. So when they come together, it is suppressing sexuality. Venus and Mercury are also known as friends in the Vedic astrology system. So when they come together, it's generally quite positive. But what they don't tell you is that they have a frenemy sort of relationship. They're not exactly friends. They're friends who have a love-hate relationship with each other. Otherwise, Venus would not be debilitating in a Mercurian sign. Think on that. Because debilitation in Vedic astrology is not a death sentence, it is not a curse, it is actually a humbling of Venus energy. Because Venus in Virgo is the most exquisitely self-critical placement in the zodiac. This person sees every flaw. And I don't mean in outsiders, in themselves first. And later, it goes to outsiders and their relationships. And it is with extraordinary precision. Now, if you're a healer, this is one of the best placements you can ever have. Why? Because that flaw that you notice in other people, then you can use to then improve their lives. But if you're not a healer and you're living a normal life with normal jobs and businesses or whatever, then this critical eye is sharp. Brilliant, but nothing escapes their notice. And when it turns inward, turns on the self, it becomes devastating. So the family wound associated with this one is almost always indicates a family environment characterized by constant criticism. Parent whose love was inseparable from critique. This is almost right, but not quite. If you had only done this differently, if I just want the best for you, followed by another correction. It's non-stop, really. The child with Venus and Virgo internalizes that voice, and it grows up with the internal critic so precise, so relentless that they forgot it was not their own voice. The cancellation of this debilitation is also possible if it conjuncts with Mercury. And the reason I bring this up is because it's quite common, in fact, to have Venus debilitation cancelled through Mercury, because within the orbit around Earth and around the Sun, Venus and Mercury orbits are very close together. So in maximum charts, Venus and Mercury will be conjunct. So if Venus is debilitated, it's very possible that debilitation is breaking apart, which is great news, which means you have initial conflicts with the partner and then it gets resolved. That's what it means to have a Nietzsche Punk Raj Yoga. This is the gift of Venus and Virgo. When healed, the capacity to love it is made beautiful, made precise, to show up for love with extraordinary care and service, in fact, because Virgo is also the sign of service. And there is genuine devotion here, okay, because it's also aspecting the 12th sign of Pisces. So I want to say, I know we're not talking about wealth in too much in this particular video, but people with Venus and Virgo tend to become extraordinary business people. Very sharp intellect, very sharp intellect. They can resurrect anything, right? Venus has Rith Sanjeevani, so power to resurrect the dead. So in Virgo, they can do very well with dying businesses. If they are in a profession like that, then go into a business that is about to file for bankruptcy and then come out and flip that around. So, very good placement for that. You want to know which configuration is yours because it's meant to be a design specifically for the complexity of Venus, a lesson that you're meant to learn in this lifetime. And the deeper the wound, the more profound the healing you are capable of, and not just for you, for the world in general. So let's go into chapter 5, understanding the 12th house where Venus finally comes home. I love this part. The 12th house of the sign of Pisces, this is known as the Vyaya Bhav, the house of losses. But don't be scared. This house has a lot of good things, so let's get into it. Because I use the word loss intentionally, the world has taught us to fear loss. But Vyaya in Vedic tradition is not just ordinary loss, it is sacred dissolution. What is the 12th house? So with the full geometry of the 12th house, Vyaya means expenditure and release. What you pour out, what you give away, what you choose to let go of. Then it also a house of moksha or liberation, the final freedom. The house that governs the dissolution of the ego self and the return to source. The Shaya, or also dreams. That is what Shaya means. The altered states, the subconscious, the house when the conscious mind rests and something deeper speaks to you. Then there is the pravasa, which is foreign lands, exile, distance from your origin, place of origin. The physical or metaphorical journey away from where you came from. Then there is ekanta, which is sacred solitude. So the aloneness that is not loneliness, the chosen quiet that fills rather than the emptiness of the void. That is a very Ketu level void. The singularity inside of a black hole that you can't see, where you're completely invisible. Then there is charitable service, which is dana, giving without any expectation of return. Love as a one-way door. Then there's also ashrama, the hermitage, the retreat. So the spiritual sanctuary, where seekers go to shed what is not their own. This also includes prison, detention centers, rehabilitation centers, things like that. Now, understand what the universe did here in terms of design, because Venus, the planet of love, beauty, relationships, pleasure, and natural lord of the 7th and 2nd house, which are Marakas, exalt in this 12th house of this natural zodiac in Pisces. So let me play this slowly and let it unfold. Every planet has a sign where it is most its fully self, where it operates at maximum potential, maximum wisdom, maximum alignment with its true nature, and that is called its exaltation point. For the sun, that places Aries, which means leadership and sovereignty. For the moon, it is Taurus, nourishment and peace. For Jupiter, it is Cancer, abundance and grace. For Saturn, it is Libra, justice and structure. And for Venus, the planet of love and beauty, this placement of maximum wisdom is Pisces. It is a sign of dissolution, sign of boundlessness, sign of surrender, and the ocean itself. This is weird. I would love to use the word weird because Venus is meant to give you material gifts. What is it doing in this particular sign, being so happy? So, have you heard the saying that you need to know the code to break the code, to need to know the system, to be in the system, then to dissolve it? You need to understand Maya or the illusion to be able to become a code breaker. That is what Venus is doing here. It's giving you all of these material benefits, family, relationships, businesses, resources, money, and taking all of that away from you in that 12th house in the sign of Pisces, just to show you you can be happy in this world, in 3D reality, and you can be just as happy in another dimension, in the 5th 5D reality. You're the Atman, the soul, right? Why do you just get to be happy in one reality? You can be happy in all realities. So what does this mean? I said that the natural houses, 2nd, 7th, and then the 12th, are in natural tension with each other. 2nd house is making a 6-8 combination in the month. 6 is conflict, 8 is death and rebirth cycle and transformation. It's doing exactly the same thing between the 7th and the 12th. 6-8 combination. Something that causes conflict dies and gets reborn again. So, the love that you experience in a Piscean energy is meant to be saint embodied. Doesn't belong to this world, it belongs to a very higher dimension. It belongs to merging of souls rather than just merging of bodies. A lot of people in 3D reality make the honest mistake when they have Venus and Pisces is to merge sexually and feel that is enough, because the high that you get from that, they feel like that's the highest expression, but that isn't. That is just the earthly expression. The highest expression is when you achieve enlightenment together, when you are bound so spiritually and your life missions are in one direction. That takes you to a kind of love that you can't even comprehend because you're aligned in every aspect. And then that 6-8 combination between all these Venusian signs then become, rather than conflict, becomes service, and rather than death and rebirth cycles becomes transformation, which is divine. So you're no longer a 3D soul, you become a 5D and above soul. Okay? So this is known as pure devotion. You become a bhakti master. Every mystic, even a Sufi mystic, if you really look at some of their work, put themselves out in service, and art and devotion came from these sort of placements. So the journey laid out here is obviously complex in 3D reality. A lot of conflict involved, I understand, especially if you are coming from difficult households and backgrounds. One of the safest things you can do is try not to change your family dynamic, because it is not meant to be changed. And you go through any sort of a psychology textbook out there or through an actual therapist, and they'll tell you that you can't actually fix narcissistic dynamics within families. They only tend to get worse and worse, and they will only start to deplete your life force energy to a point where you can't function. So it's important not to change them. Your job is to, if you can, if the responsibilities are not so overwhelming, if you can do that for yourself, the greatest gift you will give yourself is to go no contact with this family or the relationships that you may have attracted as a result of this conditioning. That is your safest option. It will not only keep you physically safe, it will also keep you mentally safe, because our mental health are the most under threat here with 12th house energy. So the love that requires conditions needs to dissolve in the 12th house, and what simply remains requires nothing. It gives without measuring. So if you stay in isolation long enough, it will teach your nervous system a different kind of blueprint, because what you're really doing is cutting off a feedback loop. Your 3D reality has stopped showing you that these are the conditions you need to meet to get love. And when you cut off that feedback loop from its ground up, within a year, maybe it might take longer, maybe 2 years, even 3 years, however long your nervous system takes, it will teach it that now people around me are not attacking me. I am safe to build my own blueprint of love. That is the best thing you can do for yourself in this lifetime. Stay alone for 1 or 2, 3 years. It's okay. And then once your nervous system is set, you go back out into the world and you attract genuinely good partnerships. In that alone time, teach yourself things. Do self-development courses, go to therapy, learn artwork, dance, have freedom, travel. Because the feedback loop is not going to get cut off straight away. It's going to take time. Do all of these things alone. And teach from within what it means to be, what it means to have your own values, what it means to have a relationship with yourself, not one that mirrors the family. And then you experience the 12th house kind of love. So 2-7 informs the 12th. One of the other things that this one might do for you is spending some time alone is increase your longevity. People don't realize how much energy they're draining from the 2nd, from the 7th, and from the 12th houses. Spend all this time by yourself. All that energy comes back to you. Even a level of celibacy does that, because it's preserving your pranic energy. If you have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it says one of the greatest ways to manifest anything is to conserve all that sexual energy within you, and then you can manifest upon command. And this is not just written work or theory, it is very well tested in any manifestation circles over and over. And I've seen exactly how much life has gotten easier when you cut that feedback loop right off. Nobody's going away from you forever. People will come back into your life and in a healthy state. But only if you are in a healthy state. If you keep entertaining this repeatedly, it won't be like that. You are what you broadcast. You attract what you broadcast as well. This is not just for your benefit, it's also for their benefit. They're not getting the best of you, are they? They're getting only half a version of you that's completely depleted. I'm guessing there would be a lot of resentment as well coming from this constant conflict that you have to endure. And then eventually you will realize that you become a healer, not just for you, but even for others. When I notice these charts in consultations, I see that there is a very clear pattern between an afflicted Venus and people who then go on to become healers later in life. So I've seen it across multiple readings and found that the people who've suffered the deepest at the hands of relationships outside of them understand the wounds very clearly and do not repeat their mistakes. They become the greatest healers and the gifts because they know they have endured. Because the more you spend time with yourself, you will learn to validate yourself. You learn how to do difficult things on your own and congratulate yourself. Treat yourself well for doing things on your own. We want to learn something that is different, that is freedom from approval. And this is where your soul's power actually returns, and not just in theory. Because when you're no longer seeking approval from those who withheld it, you become ungovernable by anyone's opinion, not just your family, but literally anybody on planet Earth. And that is a leader I want to be led by. So, give back to yourself. And when you do that, you have so much energy pouring out of you. There's only love to give outside of you. So, this is devotion at its finest. And when that happens, your longevity automatically increases. It's like quitting cigarettes or not sitting for all of the day, right? So, yeah, if you were going to live up to 75, let's say, just for argument's sake, now you live up to 85. COVID was one of those greatest pattern-breaking energies I've ever seen in history. Pattern-breaking especially for family, because what you would have discovered within 20 or 30 years within your family dynamic or within your marriage, you discovered it within a 1 or 2 year period. Many relationships dramatically fell through because of COVID, because of being compressed into being in each other's face for so long without any outside contact. This is exactly that. People actually go to detox centers to experience this, whether it's digital detox or they go to Vipassana to cut off the feedback loop for days at a stretch, so that feedback loop is not constantly informing their nervous system that they have to live a certain kind of way. It's breaking the pattern. So if you have very difficult family patterns, and if you are struggling, there is a lot of support and help that you can get that is very affordable, and some of them are also free. I hope that this entire masterclass on Venus and psychology of difficult family patterns was helpful for you. My intention with this one was to educate, because I experience in most of my readings people struggling with patterns that go back not just this family on 3D reality, but also lifetimes. One of the reasons why we come to galactic astrology is specifically to understand our life impressions. In Vedic terms, this is known as samskaras. What we are bringing into this life. Why are they creating so much conflict? Now, this is obviously not going to apply to everyone, so please bear that in mind. Not every Venus placement is problematic. So yeah, I hope this was helpful to you. Do check out my 2026 Transit ebook. It gives you an full understanding of your transit in 2026, and it's also a great way to learn Vedic astrology, because you will see them manifest right in front of your eyes, and one of the best ways to learn, really, because you emotionally connect with them. I go into a lot of detail, and it's a 136-page book. I know it sounds like a lot, but you can actually study it over a weekend, and then, all transit videos, in fact, any Vedic astrology video will become a lot more engaging for you. It's worth learning it. All right, I will see you in the next video, so do stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't already, and bye for now.